All right, we'll get going. Welcome everybody to today's special CCP meeting. A couple of quick announcements. Ron Johnson will be appearing for Tracy today. And Supervisor Villegas will not be able to make it. So those are two changes real quick. With that being said, can we do a roll call vote of the CCP, please?
Member Evans? He's absent. Member Dale Johnson?
Here.
Member Ron Johnson?
Here.
Member Larson?
Here.
Member Lewis? Absent. Member Miller?
Here.
Member Nigel?
Here.
Member Raven?
Here.
Member Valdez? I don't see her. Member Vega?
Here.
And Member Villegas is absent, and Member Fruitnick.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. A little bit of housekeeping. Today's meeting is being held telephonically pursuant to Assembly Bill 361. This Assembly Bill allows governing bodies of local agencies to hold their meetings electronically, provided that members of the public can also observe and provide public comment electronically. We'd just like to take a quick moment before we begin to acknowledge that this is Karen Larson's last CCP meeting. Karen has been with the CCP since the beginning, since 2011, and she's served in various capacities during that time. She's always pushed for more programs and more funding for the clients we serve, and treatment has been her top cause. She's moving on to become the CEO of the Steinberg Institute. They are very lucky to have you, and we will miss you, Karen.
I'm gonna miss all of you too. Thanks, Dan.
All right, first action item is to consider approval of the agenda. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at it. Would anyone like to make any changes, or do they have any questions about the agenda? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Jonathan and seconded by Dale. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Member Evans is absent. Member Dale Johnson?
Yes.
Member Ron Johnson?
Yes.
Member Larson?
Yes.
And Member Lewis is absent still. Member Miller?
Yes.
Member Nigel?
Yes.
Member Raven?
Yes.
Member Valdez?
Yes.
Member Vega?
Yes.
Member Villegas is absent, and Member Fruitnick.
Yes,
Okay, motion passes.
thank you. Agenda item number 3. This item is to renew authorization to hold this meeting remotely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. If that's okay with everyone, can we get a motion to approve us to continue to meet remotely?
Miller will make that motion.
First by Chief Miller. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Under Sheriff Johnson. Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Member Evans is absent. Member Dale Johnson?
Yes.
Member Ron Johnson?
Yes.
Member Larson?
Yes.
Member Lewis is absent. Member Miller?
Yes.
Member Nigel?
Yes.
Member Raven?
Yes.
Member Valdez?
Yes.
Member Vega?
Yes.
Member Villegas is absent, and Member Fruitnick.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next up is number 4, public comment, opportunity for members of the public to address the CCP on subjects related to CCP business and not otherwise on the agenda. Do we have any public comment?
I see no hands raised at this time, Chair.
All right, thank you. Brings us to number 5, approve minutes of the January 13th meeting of the CCP. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review them. Is there any changes or any concerns? Scanning the boxes, I'm not seeing anybody. Can we get a vote to, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Karen. I'll move.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Dale. Roll call vote, please, to approve the minutes.
Member Evans is absent. Member Dale Johnson,
Yes.
member Ron Johnson,
Yes.
member Larson,
Yes.
and member Lewis is still absent here. Member Miller,
Yes.
member Nigel,
Yes.
member Raven,
Yes.
member Valdez,
Yes.
member Vega,
Yes.
and member Villegas is absent, and member Fruitnick.
Yes,
Okay, motion passes.
thank you. Next up is an action item, receive presentation of the Day Reporting Center recidivism data. Consider a one-year contract extension for the DRC services and form an ad hoc subcommittee to evaluate the current DRC model in an effort to inform a request for proposals for a future DRC services. Is Kevin, if he's not already, can we bring him over as a panelist, please? To lead us off, it'll be Kevin O'Connell.
I'm not seeing Kevin O'Connell. Oh, he's already there. Okay.
Kevin, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'll be kind of walking through a short presentation of kind of a first shot at kind of an evaluation of kind of finding out, what are the ways that the Day Reporting Center you're currently considering, there it is kind of working. And I think just to kind of give you all kind of something to think about as you're considering kind of next steps on the renewal period, and really to kind of think about what this program does, who it connects, and kind of what's really happening at this one location, but knowing that it connects to a lot of different people, a lot of different needs, and a lot of different local providers. So I'll be going through today is kind of a touch on recidivism towards the end, but also a way to kind of frame, I think, kind of what the Day Reporting Center does. And I think it's really important to think about all the moving pieces of it to then get to, some of the things we care about, which are obviously recidivism, but to kind of consider some other kind of moving parts of it. And really, it's a way to kind of inform you all about kind of what I found out from talking to both people, stakeholders, as well as SCOE, to really kind of better understand what this program does and how to give you all something to consider. In your packets, you should have received the PowerPoint I'm about to walk through. I also included a kind of a flow chart of what I kind of understood different ways into the Day Reporting Center and through the different services. I'm not going to go through that on the call today, but that should be in your packet, as well as a possible, it's called a logic model, which is a way to kind of inform what is the program doing, how well is it doing it, and what are the kind of impacts it's having. And again, these are just kind of things for you to consider. I'm going to be walking through just the PowerPoint piece today, but happy to talk about some of the other kind of flowing kind of program design pieces as well. Next slide, please. So this is kind of the overview of what I'm kind of trying to simplify what the Day Reporting Center is doing. Three bullet points isn't going to do it, but I think at least to kind of get you all kind of focused on what I think the important things are to take away from this. And really, it's a way to kind of provide a comprehensive service to both probationers, people on parole, as well as basically a general population being released from the Yolo County Jail. And again, who they're serving and how is a big part of that, but really to kind of focus there on who's actually being served or referred to the Day Reporting Center. And also then what are they trying to do though is really trying to help with community reintegration and reentry, and also reduce future recidivism and future reoffending behavior. I'll define recidivism in a couple of minutes, but I want to kind of put that out there as kind of the general approach that's being taken. And also that the Yolo County DRC also takes what I would call as a community resource center approach to doing a Day Reporting Center. There's different types of Day Reporting Centers that from the ground up do different types of things. And I would say this kind of more falls into kind of the one-stop shop. How do we get lots of different services in one place? Where other Day Reporting Centers are more of what's called a graduated sanction, or somebody has to be almost in basically a certain kind of part of the justice system to go into it. What I've kind of found about the YOLO Day Reporting Center is that it serves lots of different people through lots of different kind of conduits and lots of different kind of couple different levels of risk. So it's important to consider just the philosophy of what the DRC does, not just kind of it's called a DRC. And I can talk more about the different types there are, but I think it's important to say you've created one that is more about kind of connecting people to services in a one-stop shop, not other kind of brands out there. So if you're going to compare it to other counties, just keep that in mind. They might call it a DRC, but it may not actually be how you all design it. And the last two parts there is there's two kind of types of programming that people receive there. One that are run by SCOE and currently SCOE to kind of basically things they run there through different curriculum. And there's a variety of them I'll kind of talk about in a second. That also referring to other community partners that are there as well and kind of co-located or sources for referral. And that's an important part of it. You have lots of different people receiving lots of different services from both things that are run by the DRC, but also ones that are through other program partnerships. And that really does meet a lot of different people's needs once they're referred there. But it's an important part to consider is this is multiple different programs being run in one place. And that's kind of something to think about what success looks like, because it's lots of different clients, but also lots of different kind of individualized programs for people. Next slide, please. And so who are these different clients? I put together kind of like my kind of take on the 5 different kind of populations that are being served. And the reason I try to break this out a little bit is you have different groups there that use the DRC, but you kind of see here their pathway is somewhat different. And I think you're also considering kind of like, doing a little more kind of what's called jail inreach to get people kind of as they're coming out. But these are kind of the 5 current ones I understood that are, kind of currently being offered. And one is to probationers, people currently on formal supervision who have moderate or high risk of recidivism per kind of validated risk assessment tools. And really probation is the one that's to be determining what their eligibility is for the DRC or entering it. So probationers are going to be one part of it. People on electronic monitoring and overseen by the sheriff's office. So that's one where the sheriff's office concurrently with their electronic monitoring also has supervision over that population. So those people aren't necessarily on probation, but the sheriff is overseeing their supervision, and their electronic monitoring team would then be assessing their eligibility to be both on EM and then also with the DRC benefit this person while they're under this, kind of under EM. Third one is restorative justice partnership. Usually it's the DA or the defense attorney will identify individuals, and then the DA would determine, or district attorney would then determine their suitability and their criteria for the restorative justice partnership, also with agreement of the victim. And then the DRC is kind of one more part to that. So again, this is like the restorative justice partnership is its own program. The DRC would then be an additional way to serve these people in the community as well. And the last 2 are someone who's on a straight release with no supervision. And usually this is a person who's serving a, basically a county prison or a straight custody time. And then the court would then refer them to probation to refer to the DRC. So again, there are people that aren't really on formal probation necessarily, but probation might be making the referral to that. Otherwise than that, they don't have basically a probation or supervisory term afterwards. And the 5th one is then people on state parole from Yolo County. These are people that are actually overseen by the state, the state parole, by state parole. But again, they're Yolo County residents. And really what I think makes this program actually kind of unique, it's really a state-county partnership where you have, these are all Yolo County residents. But again, they're being served by both county as well as state supervision. And that's kind of a unique part to kind of, again, build the program and then, provide it with staff and clients. Next slide, please. And then what did most of the referrals come by? This is kind of a, some of this won't maybe be surprising, kind of looks like a lot of COVID era kind of referral charts, but as you kind of see 2017, 18, 19 was kind of growing up to about 350 referrals a year in 2018 and 2019. And those had a sharp decline of new referrals in 2020 and 2021. But historically, and I think it's still true, probation makes up the bulk of the referrals to the Day Reporting Center, with smaller numbers coming from the restorative justice program, people that don't have maybe a formal supervision term, or the sheriff's electronic monitoring program. And I think in the end of 2020, we did start to see an increase in referrals from all sources. But again, COVID really suppresses a lot of the kind of the possibilities there for a lot of reasons. But something to kind of think about as you're thinking about the volume that people served will eventually come back up again, but the last 2 years have been abnormally low. And I know this program has been around for more than 10 years, but again, the view was 2017 to 2021, but 1,000 total referrals from all sources. Next slide, please. So who was actually being referred to the Day Reporting Center? 80% are men, not surprising and not that different from the jail population or people that are kind of coming in contact with the justice system per se. Race also was 40% white, 30% Hispanic, and 10% Black. Not that different than most people we see in the population in the justice system, but as we do know, there is the jail and the justice system does somewhat overrepresent people in the community of color. So it's important to think that the Day Reporting Center actually looks a lot like your justice system. But again, how that looks and kind of how do you address that, I think is all kind of piece of a bigger system. But the Day Reporting Center referrals are pretty close to what that looks like. 10% have a serious mental health need, as in they have received services in the jail from WellPath. So again, they have a pretty serious level of mental health need that also needs to be served in the community. So again, not just their criminogenic needs, but also their mental health needs to be served. 15% were homeless or kind of in need of homeless housing services. And the reason that's important is both serious mental illness as well as homelessness are barriers to really engaging in services. And they become kind of known as things that are responsivity issues, where if you don't solve the housing and the mental health needs first, people really can't engage in a lot of the other services. But again, those are kind of additional pieces that the Day Reporting Center can't necessarily solve by itself, but they're also the ones that need to be partnered and really kind of connected to the community in general, which I think happens already. And the criminogenic needs on the right there are then kind of what are the different needs we see in the population that's being served by the DRC, and 80% have education and employment needs. About 60% have what we call kind of cognitive behavioral challenges, or things that really need to be kind of addressed through thinking and kind of how they think about the world. But the peers and associates, and well as antisocial behavior are big parts of that. And that's also part of what the Data Reporting Center addresses through its programming and curriculum. But also you see there's 60% have a high level of need around substance use. Again, not surprising, but again, they kind of comprise what people have multiple complex needs. This one place serves some of them through their kind of the programming they offer through the DRC, but also, and I guess I would reinforce this, the partnerships with other county agencies and county nonprofits as well. Next slide, please. And then how long do they spend in the program? This very colorful chart is meant to kind of show that even though there might be an average number of days in the program, or median number of days, about 111 days, there's a wide range of people who spend lots of different amounts of time, and also their level of success also kind of changes over time as well. But the key one here is about 22% of all the people referred stay under 30 days, which I know kind of, one of the conversations in this group has also been, how much time does it really take to have an impact on somebody's, positively for their justice involvement. And again, 22% are already kind of really maybe not engaging the way you'd like them to, or really kind of engaging in that referral. So again, they are generally kind of not going to be receiving more services. And as you kind of get further out there, you see that, the people in green are the ones that are successful. And again, the ones that are going to be in purple are the ones that were called a positive transition, which they, got employed. Whoever the referring agency decided they have, they basically fulfilled their parts of their referral, and they're kind of, they are, kind of terminated from the program, but not because of anything they did wrong, but more because they're actually on the right pathway. And the ones in green as being successful, the ones that completed the case plan per what's been developed with the DRC. So again, a couple different kind of ways to kind of think about that, but the upshot would be about half are finishing incomplete. And that kind of gives me an opportunity for more engagement and how to kind of how can SCOE and the DRC also engage with other kind of partnering agencies and the ones that refer them. Next slide, please. And then the cost per day, I think, as you kind of think about what this program costs and kind of what the value it represents is, it's really about how many people spend days in program. So what this chart represents is that, not surprisingly, when you have more people in the program, the cost goes down. And so if you're kind of looking at the budget impacts of this program is, lots of people are spending days in the program, you're gonna have a kind of a lower rate. And, in 2018-19, which is probably the year probably would be considered kind of your base year for this last couple of years, is about $13 a day, basically how much you paid every day for someone to be in the DRC. But then as client days go up, referrals went down because of COVID, that number starts going up. And so in the 2021 fiscal year, it was about $27 a day for someone in the DRC. But really what you're offering there is continued, I guess, kind of capacity. So you can't, it's like a bus. You can't just say, we're going to stop the buses until we think it's ready. You got to have the capacity to serve people, but that means your cost per day goes up. And so you'd expect that to come back down again to a kind of more manageable level over time. Next slide, please. And then the recidivism piece of this, and I always kind of put lots of caveats with recidivism. And I think part of it is I'm using a word that I know has a couple different ways to interpret it. And so the way that I'm considering recidivism here is going to be based on a rearrest, or a rebooking in the Yolo County Jail. And that's mainly kind of we didn't have the data kind of do other pieces of it, but at least wanted to demonstrate kind of what that looks like from one definition of recidivism for the county. And again, recidivism usually means a return to crime of some kind. And that can be either at the point of arrest, per your local definitions, rebooking into jail, filed charges for a conviction. And there's probably other kind of ways in there to kind of like parse it further. But it's a pretty good natural metric for success in the justice system. It can measure various kind of points in time to tell different stories about a program. So it's not just about did they recidivate or not, but when did they do it? Did that change over time? Did the program have an impact? And that gets the kind of grouping people by different types of participation over time. So cohorts, as they call it. And so today I'll be kind of talking about a cohort of 2017, people that entered the program were referred in 2017, and how do they do over time? And that gives us a way to kind of look at this population in particular with a set way to do it and not feel like you kind of have a moving target about, COVID has a big impact on what your recidivism numbers can be because fewer people being booked in the jail and fewer kind of people coming in contact because of COVID. But also you still want to kind of be able to measure progress against it. So cohorts help to have a stable, time-sensitive way to look at people and not feel like you're kind of doing apples to oranges comparisons. The bad news here is it actually doesn't give you kind of like a policy relevant comparison by itself, because it kind of sits out there as a number, but what does a good level look like? How do you really understand what success looks like? Because it really is not going to give you enough context, because I think as you all kind of deal with every day in your jobs and your life is that people are more complex than just one thing, but at least it's a marker to find that out. But again, what is a good number is kind of what is the hardest part about looking at recidivism trajectories is what does good look like? And is this an improvement? And what does that program impact? Because people have different rates. And a program like the Day Reporting Center has at least 5 different populations in there who all have slightly different levels of risk and less and kind of likelihood of recidivism anyway. It's important to have comparison groups as well. So that's kind of the intro part. Happy to kind of like talk about that in the discussion section. Next slide, please. So upshot here is 57% of referrals from a 2017 group of people that entered the program came back into jail at least one time within 3 years. So that's kind of one piece of your kind of the county's recidivism definition, but it's the one part we can kind of give you some context for. And it does take reinterpretation to figure out, well, what is it about that number that is helpful to this discussion? So what that means is that within 1 year, that 43% number, basically 43% came back into custody at least one time within a year. By year 2, 51% had, and by year 3, 57% has. So what that says is most people coming back into jail again come back. Most of them almost all come back within that first year. Then after that, you're less and less likely to see somebody come back for the first time at that rate. And so what that means is cumulatively 57% people come back, but we also know that people come back multiple times if they are going to come back. And so what that chart on the right there says, well, what do they actually come back for? We find out that actually about 35% are things like warrants and supervision violations. So not necessarily new crimes, but basically failing to obey all laws, maybe not attending probation meetings, missing parts of it that actually would say they're complying with all the terms and conditions of their release. Warrants and supervision violations take a big chunk of that. And that's also not that different than the jail population in general, for people that do come back into custody again. Warrants do make up a big part of that. And I would say most of the supervision violations are really more about not engaging with probation and really being kind of whereabouts unknown. So I think that's an important difference about engagement. That also points to those first couple of weeks with the DRC as well. The other offenses there are kind of then categorizing different types of crimes and statutes into these groupings. So, property offenses make up most of those groupings, most of those with a relatively small number of people coming back for alcohol-related crimes like DUIs or drunk in public and things like that. But on average, people that do come back came back 4 times overall. And that's everybody being referred. That's not just successful people. That's every person that got in the program no matter what. Next slide, please. And then breaking out a little bit more to kind of get to some of those differences. People that were successful or that actually completed their case plan through the DRC, about 33% of those people came back over 3 years. So that's a far lower rate than your general population, but we need to kind of unpack that more. But the idea is that people that are actually completing their program successfully tended to come back into jail a little bit less. Adding to that, things like a new conviction might kind of maybe lower that number again a little bit, but at least gives you an idea there is a difference if you successfully complete the program, you have a lower rate of recidivism. But we also know that people that have already completed the program, there might be already some bias and that they're already likely to recidivate less anyway. That's kind of why we use that full referral number to get a full picture of everybody in the program, not just the ones that were successful. People that were incomplete, they came back into jail 68% of the time. Again, slightly higher rate, not surprising. Women return to jail less often than men. So again, that could be that the program is effective at kind of engaging women as different than men, but that would kind of take some more kind of research. And then more days in the program were also correlated with lower jail rebookings as well. Again, not totally surprising, but even people that were incomplete and they had more days in program tended to have fewer jail days too. That's not necessarily predictive, but at least it's kind of a way to think about what's correlated, and that engaging in the DRC does seem to have some positive impacts on people. Is it causal? We wouldn't really know at this level, but at least we kind of see that there are some positive things. And then lastly, people that with mental health needs or who are homeless tend to do come back in more often. And again, that also is a challenge I think that we face overall, is that what are the kind of things people are coming back for? And then also, how do we kind of make sure we're meeting those needs where they are and not just trying to address it through programming, but also through stabilization. So again, different populations are going to have different kind of rates of return. And that's, I think, work for kind of the future of asking kind of why, and then are there ways to kind of reduce barriers and make sure we're connecting with people as best as can. Next slide, please. And so next steps here, I think they're, kind of after this is really developing a comparison group for people kind of to get at some of these subpopulations, because as I kind of showed, that we're grouping at least 4 or 5 different people together, and they all have slightly different kind of profiles for their likelihood to basically to come back into custody or come back in contact with the justice system. So I want to be able to kind of analyze those groups a little bit differently, and also kind of figure out kind of what is a programming profile for people that are using DRC services. So we saw high levels of education need, substance use need, but also we know there's a lot of partners at the table too to kind of help these people where they are. So how do we kind of inform future program development, knowing what we do now about these people kind of from a forward perspective? And then lastly, maybe it's kind of also recommendations around program improvement that could happen if we're seeing, again, for example, lots of 22% of people actually coming out of the program within the first 30 days, how can we kind of make sure there's a really a strong feedback cycle there between the referring agency and the DRC to get people engaged and keep them engaged in the program for as long as possible. But again, those are a few steps that I think we're going to take on the kind of applying the data to kind of your next steps here. But want to kind of stop there for questions or also answer any questions about the handouts on the logic model for the flowchart.
Turn it over to the CCP body for questions or comments for anybody.
I have a question. It's a couple questions. It's Jonathan here. Hey, Kevin, thanks a lot for that. Lots of good information. Bookings into the jail, is that just Yolo County bookings or bookings in other counties?
It would only be Yolo County jail bookings. That was kind of a limit to our data. So it would only be people booked back in, which is
It's a challenge.
organization.
That's always a challenge. And those bookings, because you said booked into the jail, because a lot of people go to the jail to get booked, but they aren't booked into the jail. Is it all bookings or is it bookings for people that are going into the jail?
I said all bookings. So actually that would include people that were site released right there on the spot. So it kind of takes a bigger, not all those folks that have been housed, but they're all booked.
And so if you're considering you had that 35% that aren't new law violations, right? Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so that would increase the recidivism rate unrealistically. Would it not? I mean, because those 35%, it's not really recidivism, right?
Well, I think that's why I was using jail rebookings and not calling it, because actually they're not complying with their terms and conditions. So that would be a way to, again, all these things have different kind of connotations, and that's why recidivism is like a kind of a catch-all, but we're all meaning different things. But I think the way I interpret it, that they're like kind of whereabouts unknown, they're at least violating a term of their probation or their release. But again, it's kind of how do you kind of think about what that means for programming, and also is that truly recidivism or not? That would be kind of a question for this group, but I think I wanted to give the broadest impact to the jail, because that is if it's bed days, it's going to be impact. If people can stay involved with the programming and with their, again, the formal system, you would hope that would actually reduce those any kind of bookings overall, not just warrants or not.
Yeah, because I often feel like we shouldn't even use the word recidivism ever because it has so many definitions. And really what this is people in the DRC that are getting rebooked into the jail. Right?
This is for sure. And I would maybe I can make that more clear. Like I would call this a version of recidivism, but maybe not kind of, it's again, recidivism has a couple different definitions. I think you guys have all used those. I think they all tell us different things though, which is important.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Other comments or questions?
I think, I'm really grateful to have Kevin willing to take on this work, because it's not exactly why we brought him onto contract, but I'm really glad he could help out with this after the last CCP meeting. It's been a rough couple of years, I think, for all of us providing services. For sure, the pandemic has been hard, and I think all of our outcomes have taken a hit. I will say these are a little worse than I anticipated, though. Like the recidivism, whether we want to use that as a metric or not, it's pretty much what it was pre-AB 109. I mean, if we compare it to pre-AB 109, that's what it was when we didn't have AB 109. So it's disheartening, and we definitely have some work to do locally, or you all will. Because this isn't what any of us want for our offenders, and we all can do better. I think we all share in the responsibility, and looking at the slides, it looks like each of our agencies probably could help support the success a little more, but more definitely needs to be done in looking at this data.
Looking for others raising a hand or so. Mark or Chris, I don't know if you want to chime in with anything. You don't have to, obviously.
Muted. First, I agree with Karen. Thank you, Kevin, for putting this together. I thought it was very comprehensive, and thanks for sharing it with us, last week, just to kind of brainstorm some, different things that the Day Reporting Center does. Just the part that I'd like to point out is the longer clients are in program, the better that they do. And a lot of the clients that are in the program for 30 days or less does not mean that we might not have even programmed them for one day, but we're working with our agencies to keep them engaged, to try to get them to show up to the Day Reporting Center. So although it shows they were referred and it shows that they were maybe enrolled for 20 days, that doesn't mean that they received any programming or even showed up, but it does reflect on there. So I think it's understanding what this is, which is everybody that's referred, that these are the outcomes. And how we can work together with our partners to ensure when clients do not show up, how we can have a immediate response to either engage them or to supervise them or to do different things. But I know in the past we've worked with probation, and if we report that the client's not showing up and then they violate, then that goes to a jail booking, and then that reflects that way as well. So just knowing that all the way that the data is being reported, there's many layers to it. And I'm just thankful that, Kevin did such a deep dive on it.
And I would just also share the idea that over the last, because I've been here now 2 years, and just this transition, hard COVID, everybody at home doing everything remotely, we're now slowly getting back to what once was. And I think we're starting to see that. And maybe a little bit of the lemonade out of this is that we were able to do some hybrid programming now, where it's both a little bit of the in-person and have some Zooms to serve client needs if they're working or whatever that might be. And so I think those nuances is what we're really working on now, closely with the chief, to kind of find those gaps, and let's fix those gaps and then kind of keep moving forward.
It's Jonathan. I just have another question or comment. And again, it's always so important we compare apples to apples. And, although we're missing some of the, let's just call it recidivism by only having in-county, going back to that 35%, and the numbers we'd like to see the numbers better, but that 35%, I think when you're talking about pre-AB 109 recidivism, I think we're talking about new law violations. So that 35% really is, increasing that number. So isn't that right, Kevin? Because we always have to compare apples to apples. I'm not sure we are if we're looking at the recidivism numbers pre-AB 109 and the numbers you're giving us, because it's just like it's not apples and apples, I don't think. Is that right or not?
I would say a big thing there is Prop 47. All this stuff. Time marches on for all systems, but I think there's some big fundamental shifts in kind of how justice looks in the last 10 years on top of realignment. So I think without knowing what that baseline was, I think comparing it to like CDC, if the baseline is like CDCR, I don't think that's an appropriate baseline if that's kind of where the number is. I think that was a kind of a different population. But I think over time, jail rebookings have actually are probably changing a little bit. Just the nature of them is changing, where a felony before is now a misdemeanor. But I think if I'm understanding what your question is, that I think the population might have a similar rate in like 2011 or 2010, but I think what they're coming in for might be different. And I think that might that may be a deeper dive too about how has the population changed in 10 years that's coming into the jail in general, not just being convicted but coming in contact with the jail. If I'm understanding your question, I'm sorry if I'm not getting it right.
Thanks.
We'll open it up to any public comment at this time. Do we have any public comment?
Sorry, no hands raised.
All right, so I guess the question is where do we go from here? When I first saw the numbers, I agree with some of the comments. I was going, wow, that's not exactly where we want to be for sure. I don't think any of us want to be there, but there's a lot of factors that have gone into that. What staff is proposing is that we extend the contract 1 year, and during this time period, we go out for full RFP. I think there's a lot of good reasons for that. First and foremost is to continue services to our clients. If we don't, the contract would expire this June, and we don't have enough time to turn it for RFP process and awarding a new contract. Additionally, we've been running the DRC for numerous years, And our populations have changed. It would be good to take this time period to really evaluate what Yolo County needs for a day reporting center. We know through COVID and through AB 1915, our roster shrunk. So we need to take a look at what the true need is as far as numbers. We've also not been able to have programming inside the jail due to construction. My understanding is about another year from now, it'll potentially be open and we'll be able to have robust programming in there. So we need to take that time period as well, this time period as well, to really figure out what that would look like. Those are some of my thoughts on it. Again, I'll open it up to the body for further comments or questions or suggestions.
Hopefully that construction got some good news. So hopefully around December of this year, we'll see the finalization of that construction, and absolutely we're looking forward to that.
So with that being said, if anyone would like to make a motion, we'll certainly entertain an idea.
So Chief, just so I'm clear, what you're recommending is a 1-year extension of this contract and a full RFP over the course of this next fiscal year.
Correct. And then also I should have made a comment to form an ad hoc to work on the needs in the RFP. But yes, that is my recommendation.
I mean, I think it sounds prudent. I think we want to, we don't want to have no services available, which is what would happen if we were to end the contract now or not renew it. And I think it gives, it gives SCOE a chance to make some improvements, and it gives us a chance to make sure we're clear in an RFP in terms of what we expect with outcomes and whatnot. So I support that for sure.
Would you like to make that motion?
Sure. So the motion is, because I see Julie's going to try and track what I'm saying, to extend the existing contract for 1 year, create an ad hoc committee to work on the RFP itself, and to issue an RFP within the next fiscal year for services.
Sounds good.
I second that.
Thank you. So we have a first by Karen and a second by Dale. Phil, not to put you on the spot, but since this is, well, it's two separate things. The first part would be the executive committee because it's a budget issue. The second part for an ad hoc, since it's not necessarily a budget issue, it could be the full body. So do you have some advice or guidance on that? Should I bifurcate the motion?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think you raised a good point. The ad hoc seems like it should be a vote of the full CCP relating to process rather than more of a budget or strategic plan driven issue. Although I could argue that, but I do think it's cleaner to do it with the full CCP.
All right, with that being said, Karen, would you feel comfortable amending your motion, or?
So then the motion would just be to extend the DRC contract for a year and issue a new RFP over the course of the next year.
Correct.
I will second that motion.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call vote of the executive CCP membership?
Okay, okay, sorry, I don't have it separated out, so give me 1 second here. Okay, so member Dale Johnson,
Yes.
member Ron Johnson,
Yes.
member Larson,
Yes.
member John Miller,
Yes.
member Raven,
Yes.
member Vega,
Yes.
and member Fruitnick.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, now we need to propose setting up an ad hoc. And Phil, again, chime in if I'm wrong on this, but since it's the full body, we could have up to 5 on it. Are my numbers correct on that?
I'll double check, but I believe that's right.
Okay. I will make a motion to start an ad hoc group to work on the RFP for the day reporting center? Is there a second?
Karen, I'll second.
Okay. So with that on the table, is there any volunteers to be on the ad hoc? I would like to volunteer myself.
I would like to volunteer Ian Evans, even though he's not here.
Thank you.
That's what happens when you don't show up to a meeting.
Thank you. Dale, not to put you on the spot, but the in custody, I think it would be imperative to have someone from the SO on the ad hoc as well.
At this moment, I'll probably defer to Michelle Wolf also, and maybe I'll get somebody from detention on that also.
So one consideration for me in ad hoc is that the membership has to be exclusively the members of the body that created it. Maybe, Dale, we could work it out so that you're the official member, but that occasionally you'll have staff support or attend the meeting on your behalf. If you want to have a formal alternate, that might be another approach if the group is amenable to that.
That's
But
fine by me, Phil. I mean, I'm like Karen. My time here might be limited, so so
Well, and we can always replace you at that point.
okay,
with somebody
that's
else.
fine then.
Okay. Anybody else? Would you like to be on the ad hoc? Not seeing it. So, okay, I guess the motion would be to form an ad hoc with the members of myself, Dan, Ian, and Dale on the ad hoc. I would like to make that a motion. Is there a second for that?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Dale. Can we get a roll call vote of the full CCP, please?
Okay, Member Evans is absent, and Member Dale Johnson,
Yes.
Member Ron Johnson,
Yes.
Member Larson,
Yes.
Member Lewis is absent, Member Miller,
Yes.
Member Nigel,
Abstain?
okay, Member Raven,
Yes.
Member Valdez,
Yes.
Member Vega,
Yes.
Member Villegas is absent, and Member Fruitnick.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. We'll go to, I should say, the next step for the contract extension, I'll have to take it to the board. There's no way I can make it this next meeting on Tuesday, but I'll get it before the board, the subsequent meeting, and for approval of the contract extension as well. With that, it brings us to number 7, member announcements. Karen, I'll start with you if you'd like to say anything.
Okay, I'm gonna try really hard not to cry because I know it makes all of you men terribly uncomfortable, just most of you. So I have to say goodbye to all of you, and it makes me really sad, even though some of these meetings have not always been fun. I have definitely, having been on the provider side and the county side, got to see some really amazing things happen here in the county because of the work that we get to do in this group. So please keep doing this good work. I hope somebody else is the voice of continuing to push forward treatment and care for the people that we serve. I will just say personally, I was charged with a felony when I was 19 years old, and it was the worst thing that ever happened to me and the best thing that happened to me all at once. I ended up getting sober when I was 20 years old before I was legally able to drink, and it changed my life. And you know, if I wasn't given treatment and a chance to do better, I would have never got to be in this position in this county with all of you. And that's such a gift. And so I hope that all of you remember those people when those people are sitting in front of you, that they are human beings that deserve compassion and care, and they need us, and their children need us, because I've now worked here long enough that the little people I used to watch in daycare in Yolo County grew up and entered our juvenile justice system, and then grew up a little more and had babies and entered our adult criminal justice system and my child welfare system. So please continue this work and doing better by the people we serve, because they really need us. And it's just been, you know, an absolute honor and privilege to get to serve this community for the past 23 years. And I'm so incredibly grateful for all of you. That's it.
Karen, from the sheriff's office, thank you. I know you'll be talking to Sheriff Lopez, but on behalf of the sheriff's office, thank you for being a wonderful cohort and working well together with our office. Just knowing you the last several years, getting a chance, that's been a privilege. You make Yolo County a lot better place to work. And I am very thankful that the sheriff's office got to work with your office. And thank you again.
And from the DA's office, Karen, I'd like to say thank you too. Thank you so much for that. And, you know, we often talk about how 25 years ago when we were prosecutors, you know, we viewed everyone that comes through the system as a nail. And what do you use when you have a nail? A hammer. And we've learned and evolved over the years, and we've come a long way, and we still have some to go, that there are so many other tools, and that we have to look at people individually and see what is the driving force behind them committing a crime, because normally there is something such as a substance use disorder and or a mental illness or ACEs. And I want to say that, Karen, your partnership and the bridges you built with our office and I think law enforcement countywide really has helped law enforcement, myself included, evolve and view people as individuals, knowing that they're real people and they need our help. And that's what we need to do, is try to help them so they can become well and productive members of society and not commit more crimes. So thank you, Karen.
I don't think I'll be as elegant as that, but yeah, Karen, as I said in that email, it's been a pleasure. It really has. All the myriad of things that we've worked on together, really truly a partnership, and super appreciate it. You know, everything from 5150s to, you know, APS, CPS, and, you know, even the, you know, the issues, but I think more appreciative of the accomplishments that we've been able to do, you know, coming up with the solutions. Much appreciated, and best of luck to you.
Karen, you know, thank you for everything, and I'm going to miss you so much. Leave it at that. With that, our next scheduled meeting is March 14th at 1:30, and we'll send out before then some agenda and get some feedback on what we need to discuss, etc. So with that, I thank everybody, and let's adjourn. See ya.